You wouldn't be the first person to cry on the podcast.
That was Nick.
Yep, I was probably the first person to cry on the podcast, and we've had guests as well. So, I was crying earlier today, and it's life. It's, we got, like we said, troubled pasts.
You were? Oh, because you were watching The Last of Us.
Yeah. Last of Us. Are you watching The Last of Us?
Of course I am. So my husband and I, that's like something we really bonded on, actually, when we first started dating, because it came out the same year that we first started dating. And my husband is way more into video games, and I'm way more into movies. That's kind of like our hobbies. And that was something that I felt like was a good blend. So we like very much bonded on playing that game together. So it's been really fun to like watch the show. And it was a game that we both commented on, like, this could be a movie or a show. Like, it has such a good story. I cried like 3 times playing the game.
Only 3?
In love with movies, in love, in love,
Dani and Nic.
in love with movies. Da-da-da.
Welcome, movie lovers, to In Love with Movies.
I'm Dani.
And I'm Nick. What do we do?
This is In Love with Movies.
That's right. This is In Love with Movies. It's your favorite podcast where we talk about what, Dani?
Movies.
And love. Imagine that. It's
and
all
cats.
Right.
A lot of cats.
Princess, Powerpuff Girl, Buttercup, and every cat on the planet. And we are joined today with a fellow podcaster, someone else who's got a lot of shows out there that I'll let them plug for themselves. But I found Melissa, and listeners, movie lovers, you may remember her from her appearance on Settle the Score, where we have also appeared before. And I liked her presence, I liked her taste in movies, and therefore I was like, hey, we're following each other on Twitter, and you got a good mic presence, so how about you come pick a movie and talk to us? Melissa, say hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I was like, that was say hi.
What's other than Settle the Score, where might our followers have found you or seen you before or look for you? What projects are you working on right now?
So I joined the fan community of the Schmodown a few years ago, and so you can find me in all the different like fan leagues that are still kind of going on post Schmodown ending.
Womp, womp, womp.
And then I'm mostly right now on the video store channel.
Okay.
I'm hosting a weekly show that we talk about horror movies called Why We Love Horror. And then I also have a monthly show that I'm doing on the Picture This channel, where we are going through classic films pre-1970s as first-time watches as a year-long challenge.
Wow. So all the movies you talk about, I will have zero overlap with and have seen none
Correct.
of.
Correct.
Because I hate horror, and before 1990, I'm like, what?
Now, to be fair, I'm thinking that Singing in the Rain would have been before that, White Christmas would have been before that, and Casablanca would have been before that. Now, I don't know if you're going to cover those 3, but I know that you've seen those 3.
Can confirm, yeah.
Yeah, we're not covering those, but those are good.
So again, zero overlap.
Zero overlap. Absolutely.
Well, that's very exciting. It's great to have you on. Nick was like, "There's Melissa's coming on." I was like, "Great, love it. I love that you guys connected via
Schmo's no.
If you couldn't tell, I'm not a movie fan. Nick created this podcast so that I would watch movies. I won't say I'm not a movie fan. I'm just very set in my ways, So I have my favorite 10 to 30 movies, and that's it. So
you could say you're not a movie fan.
Okay. All right. So I'm a little intimidated by you and you, and I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. I would say you and my husband are very similar. Like, my husband's not as big of a movie fan, but he has, like you said, kind of his 10 favorites or his few favorites.
We'll have to have him on next time.
I tried. He doesn't want to be talking about movies because he's even less interested than you, and she hasn't strong-armed him enough yet for years like I did.
You can tell him how much I suck, and then maybe he'll want to come next time.
Well, with that, Melissa, since we're on the in love portion, why don't you give us sort of a Cliff Notes version of your love story with your husband? Where'd you guys find each other? How long you been together? Where are you at in your sort of stage now? Give us the short version.
Yeah. So we met about 10 years ago now. The first time we met was at a concert. Uh,
Oh,
it was my coworker and his roommate at the time. That kind of was the connecting force. And we saw Linkin Park and Incubus. It was a great concert.
Nice.
And I to this day, like I don't know if it was truly on purpose or not, but basically all of our friends ditched us, and then it was just kind of the two of us, and we really hit it off, and kind of the rest has been history. Um, and we just celebrated, yeah, in December we celebrated 10 years of being together,
mhm.
and then we just celebrated 2 years of being married this past November.
Congratulations.
Was that a?
Thank you.
Did you have a COVID wedding?
Sure did. It was actually pretty great though, because we only had 10 people, including us, so 8 other people. And it was perfect. And if I were to do it again, I would just elope. But just having those close 8 people was perfect for us, because we're not really big flashy people anyways. So it was just nice to have our close family and friends together.
That's awesome. That sounds very lovely and intimate.
Yeah, I tell people if we were to get married again, we would elope and then have a party. Just a very large party. I'm a party gal.
I was gonna say you wanted the party.
But the stress of planning a wedding for 2 years, that's too much. I would never do that again. But I'll party.
I always think that if you're planning a party that's not technically your wedding but happening around your wedding, you're still planning a wedding. Like, I think the stress would be there. But anyway, I think that's great. We've had a lot of people that have actually had COVID situations, and yours is probably the most traditional, like it sounds like you could have or would have done very similar to what you did anyhow, whereas others have like gotten married earlier, or we had some previous guests on that were also in the podcast space, and they like literally did like a video whole thing. They were telling us about like cool stuff that they did for their wedding, but it was like, because it was COVID, it was all over Zoom essentially, and they still had, like dozens or hundreds of people in attendance. I forget how many now. It's been a couple of years.
Anyways.
I was gonna say, we thought about having like a party, but it's just like, well, we're on like going on year 3 now. It's like, I don't know. We'll see.
At this point, it's like, just have a really big 5 or 10 year, anniversary party, and then that'll be taking care of it.
Yeah. Something like that. I mean, I would love to wear my dress again, because I do love my dress, but
You can wear it right now if you want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's stopping you?
let me go. Just kidding.
Next time we see you appearing on someone's podcast, you're just inexplicably sitting in a wedding dress. Like, I was told I could just wear it any time, so.
Did you get to go on a honeymoon or anything?
No, we're actually gonna be doing that this year. We're very bad about like doing things for ourselves, but this has been like the last, I would say, like year or so. We've been definitely like being a little bit more selfish and like just trying to like do things for ourselves a bit more, because we're very bad at that. We kind of just like, I don't know, just live life, and it's like, well, we should probably like live life more and go on a honeymoon, do things and travel.
That's awesome. Where are you going?
Don't know yet. We're still finalizing the details, but we're thinking about going to like flying into Florida, maybe staying there for a day or two, and then going to like the Virgin Islands,
Ooh.
Bahamas, somewhere tropical.
Nice. Can't go wrong. Where do you live right now?
I live in Colorado.
Give us your exact specific address is actually what she was.
I just like didn't even know what state you were. So it's earlier for you right now. It's only
Correct.
5:30.
No, she'd be mountain time, so it's
6:30.
6:30. Correct.
yes. Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anyway, so Melissa, since you're in a clearly committed relationship, you have been for some time. 10 years is even longer than Danielle and I have known each other. I'm curious, if you were to sort of be speaking to someone, because we have some listeners who are earlier in their love journeys, let's say, if you were to like sort of, what's something you wish you knew when you were still seeking love? Like something you think of now that you're like, this is definitely, sort of the secret to finding it or what have you, that you wish somebody had told you back then.
I mean, to be honest, I was really lucky. So, my husband Jeff, he was actually my first boyfriend. So, um,
That's
I don't
amazing.
really, so I don't really know if like it's like hard to think of what I would do different because it kind of all fell into place really well for me. Um, so I don't really know if I have a good answer to be honest. Like,
No, that's
I mean,
okay.
the people I dated before him, definitely more casual, and that's not what I wanted. Um, so I don't know. I would say maybe like try not to fall so hard because I'm just such a hopeless romantic, and like I feel like all the people before my husband, I was like so obsessed with them. So maybe just like chilling out and like being like, okay, like is this person really that good for me? I don't know, just maybe like evaluating that a bit more and not wasting my time. But yeah, I mean, I really lucked out when it comes to the love department. Because yeah, he was technically my first boyfriend.
Mm. Uh, I think I might have some insight as to why you picked the movie that you did then. You said you were a hopeless romantic.
We were
Yeah.
watching this the other night, and I literally turned to her and I was like, I am a hopeless romantic because this movie still gets me
I know he's
really
sobbing,
hard.
but not yet. We can't talk about that part
Yeah,
yet.
we're gonna hit pause on that. But I was gonna say, so it sounds like though, leaning into the hopeless romantic, you had other. It's not like your husband was the first guy you ever kissed or anything. You had other relationships. It just was like, as you were describing, you fell harder maybe than the other person did.
Correct. Yes. And I think too, like, I think maybe another thing that happened with my husband and I was we had two really difficult kind of situations happen while we were dating fairly early on.
Sure.
So our first date was on Halloween, which was the worst mistake of his life because Halloween's my favorite holiday. And now it's like extra because it's like that was our first date. So like I love it even more. Um and I don't know where I was really going with that, but yeah, so our first date was on Halloween, and then yeah, so about 2 weeks later, my dad passed away, and to this day, like I remember that day very well. I remember texting him and saying like my dad died, and because it's like okay, we were only dating for about 2 weeks at that point, and I was
Yeah.
just like, hey, like shit's hitting the fan, like I have stuff to deal with, and like I basically was like pushing him away. I was just like, hey, like you were fun. It was nice to meet you, but gotta go. And
Yeah.
then he immediately called me, and I didn't answer because of course I was terrified. I was like, oh my god, he's calling me. And I think I still have the voicemail to this day, but he left me like the sweetest voicemail that was just like, hey, I got your text. And I just want to let you know I'm here for you. And I know I don't know you that well, but I do care for you. And yeah, and that's just it meant the world. And kind of the rest again is history. With I just feel like because of that tragedy, we bonded really like hard, fast.
Yeah.
Your relationship, and then I want to say it was let's see, about 3 or 4 years later, his younger brother passed away from cancer. And so that was another very difficult kind of situation that we navigated together. Him and his brother weren't as maybe close as he wanted to be, and we made it a point to go visit him. And so he lived in Kentucky at the time, and we flew out there and we visited him, and that was the last time we saw him. He passed away a few months after that, but like that trip just meant everything. That I got to meet him. He got to kind of say goodbye to him. So just again, those two intense tragedies, like early on in our relationship, I think really bonded us.
Wow. Yeah, that's very powerful. I can only imagine what that, especially with losing your dad, and we are collectively. Movie lovers who've listened to a lot of our episodes know that Danielle and I both have, as we say, daddy issues, and we both are still to this day processing the grief of our losing our parents. When even those that's years ago for both of us, so
Yeah.
can relate. And I will say that that's something that sort of that understanding between us, I think, has helped bond us pretty quickly and early on too. So it's not surprising necessarily to me, at least, that that's something that you two came together on, you and your husband.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get to really know a true person and the person that you're going to be with that person, in response to trauma. So I have a question. Was your Halloween date, were you wearing costumes?
We sure were.
Okay, now we got to know what.
I somehow convinced him that we should both dress up like Uma Thurman and John Travolta from Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
And to this day, like, I think it's crazy that he like was willing to do that. It's like, it was all my idea. Like, I definitely was like, hey, we should do this. And he was like, okay, sure. And like, he did the whole thing. He had like the suit, he had the wig with the ponytail. And then I went all out too. I was the overdose scene. So like, I had the syringe in my
Oh my God.
like, and like blood coming out my nose. Yeah. The wig, everything. It was great.
So not only was it a couple's costume, but you still managed to take a character that could have been otherwise relatively mundane and elevate it to have, sort of those horror or body horror, at least, elements. I love that.
Yeah. It's like, I probably should have just been like the cute version for the first day. I'm like, nope, I'm just showing you who I am. We're going full horror.
And I truly believe, Melissa, that's why your husband ended up being your husband. Because what's the reason of hiding some version of yourself early in a relationship? You showed everything that is you, and he said, hey, I still like that. And then, of course, you're still together.
Yeah, on our first date, I wore sweatpants, didn't have any makeup on. I was like, just coaching tennis, sweating, being gross. And I was like, this is it.
Take it or leave it.
This is what you get.
Love it.
And I still took it.
Took it.
Well, so I'm guessing it sounds like early in your relationship, you probably had obviously figured out together how to navigate difficult situations. I'm suspecting perhaps maybe even then that COVID felt like a breeze for the two of you if you were already in an established relationship and you'd been through traumatic experiences.
Honestly, our most traumatic situation that happened during COVID was me trying to cut his hair. That led into such a big fight. But we got through it. But yeah, I fucked up his hair bad. Like, we had to like just shave it.
Just take it all off.
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask, that was where I was leading with that question, was what is your worst fight and how did you all get through it? So give us more of the details. Because Danielle almost had to cut off all of my hair, but she managed to not butcher it badly enough that I asked
I
for
was
that.
shaking though when in COVID he was like, "Can you cut my hair?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's scary."
Yeah, that's how I felt too, and
Yeah.
I fucked it up big time. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what like our biggest fight is, and I probably wouldn't share the details anyways. But
Fair.
like, I would say, kind of generally speaking, if we have a fight, it's typically about like communication or maybe not expressing our feelings maybe as like succinctly as we'd like. And I think we've definitely discovered that, especially when things get really heated, that like we both or either, I don't know, it depends on what's going on, but we usually need to like physically remove ourselves for at least a few minutes from the situation and just like take a deep breath and just like chill out, and then kind of come together to speak more, normally, and just maybe not at such a emotionally intense way. And that tends to work well for us. Just like if things start to get really heated, it's like, okay, I needed to step away for a moment, or vice versa, or he's like, I just need to step away from a moment, and then we come together. We talk about it a lot more clearly, a lot more like kindly to each other, and then we typically both like end up apologizing and move on. Like, I feel like I don't even know what our fights are about. Like, it's a great question, but I'm like, I don't even know what we fight about. Like, we typically solve it, within a few hours. Like, we've never gone like a full day or weeks or anything by any means with fights. It's, within minutes or hours we kind of solve it.
That's great. And I love your kind of pointing out, and to me that shows, I don't know, a deeper understanding. And again, not a therapist, not an expert in relationships, barely getting through my own.
Damn.
Because I'm such a mess. But anyway, what I was going to say is, I think there's wisdom there, and that you're recognizing like it's never actually what you're fighting about in the moment. What's actually the problem is you just articulated some kind of failure to communicate appropriately, and then therefore that's the breakdown. And so none of the details matter. They're just, it's always this thing. Yeah.
Facts.
That's very insightful. I like that. I also love that works for you. And this to me is also a point that we sometimes talk about on this podcast of like, different people need different things. And like the idea of separating, Danielle's learned this about me being alone for 20 minutes while we're quote unquote trying to cool down, is probably the worst thing for my psyche. Like what will happen inside my head when I'm alone with my own thoughts, especially immediately following some disagreement, is like the worst thing that could occur and is going to probably make it worse whenever we do come back together. And it's been very difficult for us to navigate that at times because Danielle, I think, is much more like you and your husband, where she would rather have the space before she then has to communicate about it.
Actually, recently I learned a very good coping mechanism. I have a Peloton and they have like heavy metal or pop punk rides. That, when you're mad, that was the most cleansing thing I've ever done. I screamed a little bit, I sweat, and then I was like, all right, let's make up. Let's talk about it.
Sounds lovely.
That was a quick makeup, but it's funny. I think the time you're probably thinking of, I was sitting upstairs torturing myself.
Well, I was having a great time.
20
Everything was great in the basement. It was good. So, Melissa, you said you're a movie gal. Your husband's video game guy. How do you guys watch movies together? How have you kind of brought him into your world? And then you said he kind of brought you into his world. How does that work out?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like we both know what our hobbies are, and we very much let each other do our hobbies and like accept that and embrace that for each other. So like he knows how, like I'm an insane movie watcher. Like I probably watch close to like 5 to 7 movies a week ish. Like it's usually several movies a week. And then, you know, he has his specific nights that he games with his friends. I think it's just all about, again, communication and making sure that we do make time for ourselves. So yes, like currently right now, we're watching The Last of Us and The Mandalorian. That's kind of like our two. We tend to like watch a lot of TV shows together. I feel like that's where we kind of come together. And then, you know, there's a few video games that we might play together, like Diablo 3 or Mario Kart or whatever. And then for movies, I usually let him pick because I love movies. So like, I don't really care what we watch. And so I typically try to let him pick. There's times that I'll be like, hey, like I really want to watch this movie with you. I want you to, you know, I want to see your opinion on it, or I think we'll both like it, type of thing. I'll show him the trailer. He'll give me a yay or a nay. But I will say this last year, so like I don't tend to gravitate to like comedies. That's just not really my thing. So that's like a big kind of gap in my movie knowledge. And so I have now seen a lot more Adam Sandler comedies because that's definitely like what he likes to watch. And they're fun. They're a great time. Like I love it.
Yeah, Billy Madison, one of the best movies of all time. And that is my type of movie.
If peeing your pants is cool, I'm Miles Davis.
Well, Nick he is also, like, today you were watching a movie. Uh-huh. He just, like, chills and watches a movie.
In fact, I think it was earlier this week, I was watching, like, finished a movie and then put another one on, and you were like, you're watching another movie? And I got all defensive, and I was like, yeah, I am. Why is that a problem? What's this?
It's funny. I'm like, you're watching a 2-hour movie, but I'm going to watch 8 hours of Vanderpump Rules, but mine's better. But Nick has instated, obviously this podcast, this is where we watch more movies, but also we do have weekly movie nights. So every Sunday night is a movie night, just so he can, we switch off who's picks what. We do
switch off the who picks what, but it is definitely, it was my need to, because we do end up sort of doing what you're talking about. We end up watching TV. In fact, Mandalorian is one that we are both watching together because, you know, the cuteness of Baby Yoda, it can be loved by all.
And if you couldn't tell, we are a Star Wars family.
Just a little bit. Yeah, no, so the for me it was, I was recognizing, and I kept making these sort of like, I don't know if you do this, I think learned it from relationships that I had modeled when I was growing up, these sort of backhanded, snide comments that are like factual, but also never intended to necessarily at a conscious level be a dig, but kind of a dig. I would say things like, I used to watch a lot more movies before I met Danielle, and it is factually accurate, but there's always like a little bit of a touch of like blaming her for not. And so I finally, through my, in fact, it was through this podcast, I started to go on the journey and realize like, no, just voice the thing you need and want. I want to share movies with you. Let's make this a thing that happens every single week. Because my wife also overbooks her life. So I know that if I don't like get on the calendar in a regular way, then it's a problem. So.
Yeah, and in return, I'm like, you're going to leave the couch on a Saturday, and we're going to go into the real world and do things, too, and it works out, I think, for us.
Agreed.
It took a while to get there, though. Or,
Yeah.
like, Nick does like video games, too, a lot, and so early on, I was like, you like your video games more than me? And then, like you were saying, no, we just have our own hobbies, and, like, that's not my thing, and that's okay.
Yeah, you like your yoga more than me?
Yeah.
And then that is another point of contention, but I think we balance each other out because Danielle, her hobbies are things that get you out of the house and active, and my hobbies are very much things that do not leave the house.
Yeah, I would say we're both pretty homebodies. Like, I don't know, we're more indoorsy, but we do like to go outdoors sometimes. Like we do, and we, we like to be like social. But yeah, I would say just our comfort is probably staying at home. We have been doing this new thing this year, which we both have really enjoyed, where we basically make it a point each month to do a date night at home and then a date night out,
Nice.
like in the world, and then we kind of switch off who is like planning which one. So like for example, last month, I did the at home date, and I planned to paint. We like did a painting activity together, and then
I totally thought you meant paint the house at first, and I was like, Melissa, this does not sound like a fun date thing to do.
So we're gonna paint the kitchen.
Sorry to interrupt. You're gonna do like a paint and sip type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So because I was a little nervous to like bring this idea to my husband too, because I'm definitely more like artsy and crafty type of person, and he's kind of has voice that he doesn't feel very artistic, and that kind of makes him nervous, but I did it anyways, and I'm so glad I did. And I kind of just picked a very like generic, like scenic, easy thing to paint of like mountains and a sunset. And then in the background we had Starship Troopers, his favorite movie, and it was amazing. He was like quoting it the entire time, just like painting, and he was vibing, and it it was so great. And like we were like gonna wrap up because the idea was like, okay, we should probably stop painting after the movie's over because it's like 2 hours of painting. That seems like a good time to stop. But he's like, we don't have to stop, because he was loving it. And it was such a great surprise.
Aw, that's awesome.
I love that so much. The only good bug is a dead bug. And if your husband needs convincing, I will sit and gush over Starship Troopers for like hours on end if that ever needs to be his incentive to come on a future episode. But
that could be an incentive. I'm not gonna lie.
Let him know that's an option, because I have stories for my own personal self that I will save just in case.
I've never heard of that movie ever in my entire life.
And that does not surprise me in the least.
But painting sounds great.
I know Matt Nost regularly shits on that movie, and I will say, I don't know that it is a piece of like brilliant satire I don't know that it was intended that way, but it is still just a fun, dumb action movie at the very least, and you cannot deny that as far as I'm concerned. And it is deeper than most fun, dumb action movies, but that is all I will say. I'll save the rest for when we convince Mr. Woody to come on with Melissa.
So where are your paintings at right now?
They're in the office, and I will say, okay, we do need to like bring it back out again. I would say mine is almost done, but my husband, love him, but he as much as he was like enjoying it, he was struggling quite a bit, and I even checked in with him a few times. I'm like, do you want some tips? I'm gonna help you. Let's just say that he used almost every paint that we had, and it's just like one color at the end.
It's like brown.
It went through a lot of different shades.
That would totally be me if I ever attempted one of those things. I've never done one of those paint and sips. I've never felt like I've got an artistic bone in my body. I struggle with figuring out how to paint the cosplay stormtrooper armor that I'm building. Like, that's the level of I can identify. Well, Melissa, is there anything sort of that we haven't already covered that you feel is sort of for you and your husband the secret to keeping a happy relationship?
I think the biggest thing is just truly accepting, and I'm sure it's like kind of cliche to say, but like truly accepting each other for who you are, and like including the flaws, the hobbies, all of it, just like truly accepting each other, and supporting each other. And I think it's important to be, a good team, communicate. But I think it's also important to not get into the space where you become roommates, because I think we've had that stage at certain points. So I would say, be a good team, but make it sexy. Because I think there is times where like, you're just going through your life day to day, and it can get monotonous. And like, I think it's just important to kind of make sure you keep that spark alive, however that works for every couple out there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that really answered the question.
It does, although I'm going to ask a follow-up if you're willing to speak to it. For you, how do you keep that spark alive? Because I think you're right. I think that if you're with someone, you're with a life partner, you're living with that person, inevitably there's going to be times where there's more of that roommate vibe. And yeah, you got to find ways to kind of spice things up. So I'm curious, Melissa, to what extent you're willing to share. How do you keep things spiced up?
Again, I think having the date nights is definitely helpful. Like the one at home, the one out, that has definitely helped things. I think it's also just to communicate those type of needs as well, like sexual needs. And just like making sure that we're on the same page with that. And just also just overall like life path, like, just seeing that we have like the same goals. So again, I think it always comes down to communication, like with everything. But I think with like, in a marriage, it's literally everything. It's like finances, sex, family, blah blah blah. It's everything. Like so something recently that we kind of did that's been, I think, really good for us is, so we've had shared financials for like years, and it got to a place where it felt like we were kind of like asking each other permission too often, and it was just like, okay, like let's just open up separate accounts, and we'll put $50 a month into that account for both of us, and just spend it on things like for yourself, or because it kind of came up because around the holidays, it's like, I want to buy stuff, but you're gonna like see it, like. So I feel like it's always like little things like that, just like things come up, and it's like, let's talk about it and let's come up with like a solution. So I guess that's how we keep it, the spark alive. Is just like when like a problem happens, like we talk about it and we come up with a solution and just keep on going.
Yeah, that's great advice. I remember seeing a TikTok that was saying that you're gonna be married to like 3 different people throughout your life, but it is the same person. And like we're going on almost 9 years. Yeah, we're almost 9 years together, and like kind of already seen maybe the second person, like we're not the same people we were when I was 22 years old.
Yeah.
Like you're going to evolve and you're going to change. And I think that's where marriage can get sticky, is like expecting you to be the same person or always have the same thoughts. But if that was the case, I don't think we would still be together.
Oh,
Also, I was like super judgmental, like I was talking about with video games and stuff, or like Nick's a nerd. And I used to be like, oh my God, you're such a nerd. And I'm like, yes, I will be Ahsoka at Comic-Con with you this year. Like bumping heads with me. Just
sorry, just doing fist bumps. I'm getting so excited.
Having that communication and, like you said, loving your partner fully. I think that's really great advice. Nerdiness and all.
And even with making you get active and get off the couch and be a slightly healthier person, and cutting a lot of red meat and sodium out of your diet,
All those things.
Yeah. Well, Danielle, is there anything else you want to ask Melissa before we get on to our movie?
What shade is that lipstick? Because it's great.
I I'm not sure. It's from Sephora. It's from Sephora. It's like a dark red. I'm a lipstick gal. Like I love lipstick. Pretty much if you see me on a something in the interweb web, I'm probably wearing lipstick.
I like it. It looks great.
It is a great shade. It is a great shade.
That's all I got.
That's all you got? Well,
Thank you.
The shade of lipstick actually goes very well into our movie. So, Melissa, why don't you let us know? We're going to be talking about a movie after the break, and what movie will that be?
Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge.
Oh, don't we have a button for that?
Not the actual air
darn
horn.
it.
So we have this. Applause, applause, applause. There we go. All right, movie lovers, we will see you on the other side of this break.
In love with movies. Da-da-da.
And we're back. Melissa dancing to our tiny little intro. I love that.
It's a bop,
It
I
is a
will
bop.
say.
It goes hard.
Especially the remake. Like
Yeah,
the
the
original
remix
was
is good, yeah.
season 1 is kind of silly. Season 2 though, when we had that remake done, it was nice.
The beat drops.
Thank you, Paul Brandt. So yeah, welcome back, movie lovers. This is the portion of the podcast where we talk about a movie, and we'll be discussing Moulin Rouge today. So.
Wait, itchy kitchy ya ya gaga da.
Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
C'est soi. Yeah.
So, starting real quick, just try to get it out of the way. Our opening credits.
Yeah, get it out of the way.
For anybody who hasn't seen this movie, Moulin Rouge came out in 2001. Stars Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor. That will come up later as to why I just gave that tone to it. John Leguizamo.
What? Who's John Leguizamo? The little guy?
Oh my God.
No way.
Okay, so I might as well just say it now, by the way. The reason I put so much sauce on the Ewan McGregor is we're literally an hour into the movie, and Danielle turns to me with Ewan on the screen, and she says, "Is that guy famous for anything? Did he
Did he ever get famous?
Did he ever get famous?" That was the wording. Did he ever get famous? And I literally turned to her with a
He
stunned
almost
look.
divorced me.
I was like, "He's fucking Obi-Wan." And she went, "What?" Yes, and John Leguizamo also in it.
Is he the little guy?
Yes.
Okay. Whatever.
John Leguizamo, who now would probably, the role would be played by someone like Peter Dinklage or something like that, because Leguizamo is literally supposed to be a little person, and he's a short dude to begin with, but he is very awkwardly walking around, and he looks funny when he walks around because, and I don't know if you knew this, Melissa, he's actually literally walking on his knees. They did, they did like a costume in a way that he had fake boots that he put on his knees and then was, just hobbling around. So, yes, John Leguizamo was in this movie.
Wow, that's shocking.
Oh man, Jim Broadbent, who plays, for those of you who know, that's Ziedler, who to me just absolutely crushes this. I forgot how much he crushes it, but anybody who doesn't know this movie may know him from playing Boss Tweed in Gangs of New York, or if you're a Harry Potter fan, he played Slughorn, who's one of the professors later on.
Oh.
Richard Roxburgh. I love it. This is always like news to Danielle as I go through this stuff.
Love it.
Richard Roxburgh plays the evil Duke in this. He was also M. He was the villain in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is not a particularly good movie, but it's one of my guilty pleasures. And
he's also the villain in Mission Impossible 2, or he's like the henchman.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. Now I'm not putting that. I'll have to go back and look for that. I did not see that. I did have though. Have you seen Elvis, Melissa?
I have not had the pleasure yet. I'm a little nervous, but we'll see.
So Baz Luhrmann clearly still liked working with Richard Roxburgh because he plays Elvis's dad in Elvis.
Okay.
Not a big part though.
It's a mediocre part. Anyway, it's definitely not as big as the Duke. It was, speaking of, written and directed by Baz Luhrmann, which, if you didn't know that going into this, because Danielle, we were 20 minutes in, and she was like, what the hell is happening?
No.
And then
We were 4 minutes in. And I was like, this is a lot. There's a lot going on.
And then when I told her it was Baz Luhrmann, she was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's the rundown of the movie, of the basics of it. And so now we'll just go ahead and move into our love stories with this, so that, because I've taken longer on this part than usual, I'll start my love story. The first thing is just basics. I definitely saw this at some point in high school. I don't think I ever saw it in theaters, but there were a number of theater geek type kids that I was friends with that were very big into this. And then that became my sort of window into it. And then because I was uncomfortable with sharing that part of myself, sort of secretly loved all of the music in this and would like sing it to myself, and found myself singing it along as we were watching last night. But yeah, like I would kind of like pretend like I didn't like it as much as I did. And then I'm sorry, apologizing listeners for the cuteness overload with this, but I actually proposed to Danielle during and because of the song Come What May. So we would be getting ready together in the mornings, and that would be a song that kind of was a part of our list of our songs. And we're singing the song to each other, and then Danielle said the line, you know, I'll love you to my dying day. And I said something to the effect of, are you sure? And her, with toothpaste in her mouth, said, yeah, of course. And so I ran and got the ring, and then got down on one knee and proposed to her.
In the bathroom.
But yeah.
My God, that's so cute.
So those lyrics, very important to us.
Yeah. So my love story is I had never seen the movie until last night. But we did go see Moulin Rouge live a couple months ago.
Yep.
It's on Broadway right now.
On Broadway.
Chicago Broadway, but still.
Yeah. And it was good. It's different because they've done a lot of more updated songs. But yeah, I would say it was a very solid performance. Now, I have a confession to make before I let Melissa continue with her love story.
Oh, no.
You mentioned you had not seen it.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm a fan of the music, and it's been on the list of movies that I've been trying to get you to see for years.
Yeah.
In trying to help pick this, Melissa was kind of hemming-hawing, struggling to figure it out. I sent her a list of movies that were literally the list of movies I want to make you see. And from that, she picked this movie. So
dang, shiesty.
Thank you,
Nice work.
Melissa.
Yeah.
I very greatly appreciate it because clearly I've got history, and now I finally can share.
Actually, I have one more thing with that song. I knew the song though because when I was in high school, our like marching band and color guard and everyone did Come What May, and my husband at the time, my gay husband in high school, he sang the song, and I remember like sobbing, being like, "This is the most beautiful song I've ever heard."
How can you not, right?
Yeah. Anyways, so the music, obviously, well, the one original song that's in there, fantastic. Okay, Melissa, what is your love story with this?
Yeah, so I saw this for the first time when I was 10 years old, and my life changed forever, basically.
Yes.
So I come from a pretty like troubled past, but both of my parents are addicts, and so I had a pretty turbulent childhood, and that's a big reason why I love movies. That was something that kind of was a constant in my life that seemed more stable than the environment going on around me, and particularly like age 10 to like 16 was like the height of it all. And yeah, this movie like became my personality from like age 10 to like 16. I was like
Aw.
I was like so obsessed with this movie, and it was like my ultimate escapism movie, and it definitely brought me a lot of joy during a time that was difficult. And for my 13th birthday, my dad brought me to the mall, and I got a the movie poster like framed, and that's what like was above my bed from like age 13 to like 16, and I thought it was like the coolest thing ever that I had like the movie poster like giant framed on top of my bed. But no, this movie, like, we'll get into it. Like, I understand the criticisms, and like it's maybe not a perfect movie by any means, but like it does hold a lot of like emotional weight for me, just because again it helped me through a difficult time, and I will always be grateful for it in that way.
Dang.
I love that.
Yeah.
And thank you for being so vulnerable with us about the details. That's fantastic. And I feel like, for perhaps similar but different reasons, there are other people that were like, that's how it ended up in my life. Is there were people in my life that it sounds like were very much like yourself, that this movie was kind of their identity, and that's how I got introduced to it. So
It is a otherworldly movie, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
I was just gonna say, like, in terms of it being a movie for escapism,
Yeah.
it 100% makes sense there. Which reminds me, I totally mucked up our order of things yet again, and we did not pause first for Danny's Dingle. So speaking of how crazy the movie is, we should go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Time for Danny's Dingle.
Paris, 1900. Absinthe. The Green Fairy? He wrote The Sound of Music? Chaos. Ziegler. A real actress. Nicole Kidman. Woo, baby, she manic. A duke? A writer. A duke. I love you. In an elephant. I want that elephant. Love is bad. Love is good. Love's the only thing. Love. Question mark? Love. A cast of characters. Not so nice lady. I'm dying. Come what may. You must hurt him to save him. The end. Well, actually, I should have said, never mind.
The end, not the end. The end, not the end.
Wait, what is it? The one thing you learn in life, wait.
Do you know the quote, Melissa, that she's trying to say?
Which one? Sorry.
The one thing in life to learn is to be loved and loved in return, or something like that?
You got it.
Yes.
Very good.
That was my dingle.
That was your dingle.
Yeah.
All done. I was noticing just as you were finishing, like, I took so many notes at the very early part.
Same.
Because there's just so many thoughts and so many feelings were coming back. It's been years since I'd seen it. And I have emotional attachments. And then I just kind of eventually, like, lulled into the movie, too. So, right off the bat, I forgot that there was that cool opening of it with the theater. Like, it, like, looks like the old-timey...
Yeah. The
yeah, through the curtains of the vaudeville, which I thought was pretty cool. So.
Yeah, but truly, this movie at the beginning is chaos. I think if I were just to watch this for the first time by myself, I might turn it off because I was getting a little bit of a headache. It is the wildest, like the way that it's like filmed on an angle and like the forefront and the back. It's just wild, but I guess that's Baz for you, right?
Yeah, he likes the frantic energy and editing and pacing. I feel like with a lot of his films. I don't know. I understand the critiques of like that this movie's like edited cocaine style, but like I don't know. I still like really love it. But yeah, I mean, it really is interesting the way he edited it for sure.
I wrote down so beautifully manic. Like that was because it is manic. The film itself is manic, especially at the very beginning.
But it's unlike a lot of movies, you know? It's like something where maybe it was the whole point was you had to pay attention. You had to, like, I'm sure every time you watch this, you see something different in those scenes because there's women and there's dancers and they're changing the sets and like it's a lot. But I'm sure he was trying to encapsulate the feeling of like the underworld, right? Like they're supposed to be the what
people
are they? The freaks, the people of the night, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that go ahead, Melissa.
No, I was just gonna say I think also it has the perspective of like Christian being this young, naive, this is the first time he ever was in love, that type of feeling too. So like I guess you can interpret it that like this is a memory, so it's kind of like jolted and kind of all over the place, and maybe way exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
Like so I mean you could see it from that perspective too, that like just young naive guy coming to Paris looking for love, looking to write, and that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some truth to like, so I haven't thought about it in terms of the memory and the writing, but I was thinking about it in terms of like his experience, because as I kept saying to Danielle, like it does kind of calm down later on. And so it like, and I think that's because like the part of the story of like everything's happening, I just got here, oh my god, everything's happening so quick, and then he finds this love, and then he kind of like the rest of it is clearly taking place over the course of weeks or months, and he's kind of lulling into and getting comfortable with his relationship, and that sort of then the power of the love comes, and you're done with the sort of frantic nature of it, I guess. Which, you know, if you think about it in terms of love itself, that could be sort of a beautiful reflection of what love often really is like. But in terms of movie making, it's probably just pacing issues with the film itself.
Yeah, because I mean, I think the first quiet moment we see is the intro to Satine, like her coming down. That's like a quiet moment and very focused on her. Because because yeah, everything before that is just like go 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 go, like.
Yeah, I will say, comparing this to the stage play version of it, because that's the last one I saw. They do a lot, like the Green Fairy / Absinthe is right at the beginning of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In the stage play, it's right after the intermission. Like, it's got its whole song. It's got, like, a whole thing.
Yeah.
I just thought that was very interesting. And I wonder if, like, the absinthe is supposed to represent part of the mania. Like, isn't that like, they're all wasted and high on this absinthe because it's, like, a new thing and they're, like, you know, of the underworld. Anyways.
Could be.
I
like that.
I will say, like, because you were talking about comparing it to the play did some cool and unique things with, like, bringing the audience in and with some stuff happening in the background that I don't see in a lot of play and stage work, and they were, like, kind of making the best use of the medium that they had, and that was something I took down as a note for this. Baz is very much sort of making use of the medium, like, he's creating this crazy manic environment by using rapid cuts and using strange angles and using fast pacing. And it's like, you know, to me, that's still a very effective use and shows a deeper understanding of like how I'm going to use the medium that I'm currently using for this story to tell this story, like making use of the sort of way that you're presenting it, I think.
Yeah. And it is, again, comparing to the musical, the stage musical, he's telling the story in the movie. I don't think he tells the story. I think Ziegler tells the story in the...
I think you might be right.
On Broadway.
I wasn't sure. I don't remember the typewriter on Broadway.
Yeah, there was like a straight up in the beginning of this movie. I was like, oh, spoiler alert, because within the first minute, he's like, she's dead, and I was like, dang, dang, that was, you put that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that was an interesting choice because that just kind of puts a ticking time bomb for Satine's character, because you're just like, well, we know what's gonna happen. Like,
well, I feel like maybe I could be wrong about this, but I think the timing was this was the next movie he did after Romeo and Juliet, and I think that yeah, that's correct.
I believe so, because I will say, so the "Come What May" song was actually written for Romeo and Juliet.
I saw that as I was looking things up yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it wasn't used, and that's actually why it got like disqualified for the Oscars for like the song or whatever, because I guess because it was written for another movie, it got disqualified, which is like frustrating because it is a beautiful song.
Yeah.
And obviously knowing your guys' love story with it now, that's awesome. Like,
dang, I didn't know that.
I mean, and it's because those lyrics, like you felt attached to the song without ever having seen the movie, and I was reminding myself, oh, I forgot some of these details that are specific to the movie that are attached to the song, because the song itself and the lyrics itself just sort of transcend.
Yeah. Was the movie the first representation of Moulin Rouge, or was it a musical before?
No, there's a 1952 movie, which I was going to make a joke saying, hey, I watched that one. You guys ready to talk about that?
Part of your classical movie journey.
But no, I actually have not seen that film. I am curious to see what it's like. But
interesting.
Now I want to add that to the list too, because we've had some interesting conversations about like Angels in the Outfield and some movies that are modern that you wouldn't know had a classical original, and then how they're very different. But it's also funny to me, like we complain now about how Hollywood can't come up with any original ideas, and it's like Hollywood hasn't been coming up with original ideas for decades. Let's be real with each other.
True.
But we still keep finding new ways, and as long as you keep doing new things, then it can be interesting.
So was the original Moulin Rouge, do you know this, was it just a movie, or was it a musical as well?
That I'm not sure of.
I'm just curious. I mean, obviously none of these songs existed in the 50s.
No. Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, it's very different. Because, I mean, this was a real place, like, that existed in this time period. And they definitely take some pieces of the historic, like, information in this. Like, Zidler, that was a real person. I don't know. There's a few other people I don't know on the top of my head, all of them. But they take, like, bits and pieces of, like, the real historic place and just people involved in it in this movie, but of course they turn it up to 11.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah. What's interesting is we have a membership to the Art Institute of Chicago, which is, decent. art museum. I don't like art. But there's a painting called the Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
And it's got
Okay.
Ziegler, right? It like, there was parts when I was watching the movie last night that I was like, oh my God, this is the painting.
Uh-huh.
And I think that painting, I'm sure, was done early 1900s.
Well, yeah, and that's just it, because I did know this. I remember, Melissa, when the movie first came out, there was a lot of talk about, like, the historical accuracy, things that were and weren't, things that weren't. But, like, as often happens with these kinds of movies, it created this sort of refreshed interest in the true story. So there were, like, documentaries, or, like, Natural Geographic and Discovery Channel were doing all sorts of things. So I do remember that, like, it was about real characters, or real people, but it wasn't, wasn't necessarily historically accurate. I actually was just looking it up. The 1952 one doesn't look like it was a musical, but I mean, it had Sir Christopher Lee in a certain part of the role, and it says the fictional account of French artist Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. So I'm guessing it looks like, and I probably butchered that French pronunciation, but it would be Leguizamo's character, yeah, Toulouse. So it's like following him clearly, maybe a little bit less love story. I don't know.
Yeah, I will say this viewing of it, for whatever reason, it was reminding me of a lot of Titanic in a lot of ways. Just some of the dynamics, and, like, again, both, like, historical kind of movies. Obviously, Titanic's, like, way more, like, accurate, and, like, it's just a different film. But, like, it was, like, reminding me of it in a lot of different ways. This viewing, and maybe that's just because I recently watched Titanic at the end of last year. But, like, it just reminded me, like, okay, these are two, like, historical things that existed, and there's, like, this love story where the gal is, like, I guess in this example, she's not necessarily rich, but, like, she's more, like, glitzy and glamorous, just like
Class
Rose
out
was.
of reach, yeah.
Rose was in Titanic, and then Jack and Christian are these penniless, people, but they fall in love, and their love conquers it all. Like, I don't know, I was really connecting those two movies this time around, which was interesting. And also the character that's, like, trying to kill Christian towards the end of the film. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but it very much reminded me of David Warner's character.
Sure.
As well in Titanic, and then Billy Zane with the Duke. Like, it just like there's, like, a lot of connections this time. I was like, whoa.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then there's even I was gonna say Ziegler even could be potentially other characters that you see as well, and then you've got your side characters, and his friends could be Toulouse and all that. I mean, I'm sure when Baz was writing this, he would have been coming just off of having seen Titanic when he was finishing it up, when you look at the timeline of things. So that's true. Makes a lot of sense. And we know that Leo is one of his muses, with Romeo and Juliet. So I think you might be onto something there, Melissa. I hadn't necessarily put that together, but I'm like, as I'm drawing these lines across with you, I'm like, oh my God, you're all look at it.
So, Come What May was not nominated for an Oscar because it wasn't original to this movie.
Correct. We just watched that whole show about Dan Merle was talking about how things get nominated. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Was Lady Marmalade nominated? Was that original to this movie?
I think it may have sampled too many things that
Patti LaBelle. No.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's Patti LaBelle, but
yeah, I'm not sure about the Oscars, but I'm pretty sure it won, like, at the VMAs. I think it won Video of the Year. And it might have won some other awards that year, like in the music world, but I don't think it was honored in the movie world, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Well, it also, I mean, I feel like it was done as almost a side promotional thing, but if in the actual movie, there's not very much of that song that gets played.
Yeah, just a little bit at the beginning, and I was like, where's Christina?
Yeah.
Where's Lil' Kim?
Was it Lil' Kim? Was Lil' Kim in that? Man.
Was it Lil' Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Pink and Missy? I don't know. Anyways,
Maya.
Oh, Maya. But that's actually being, of the early 2000s, loving, like, MTV, like, that sticks out to me. The music video.
It was everywhere. It
the
was
song.
everywhere.
I teach workout classes, and to this day, I put that song in my workout classes because it's a bop, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, It's so good. But things recently came out in the news that was a very toxic music video shoot, and they were very bad to Pink, and it was just a whole thing. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. But anyways.
I suppose one shouldn't be surprised given the context and given how they were dressed and given just how...
Naked.
What's lecherous? I was looking for the word lecherous. Just how lecherous men in general can be, especially in Hollywood when they feel they have power. Speaking of lecherous men, John Broadbent, I wrote down as Ziedler. This is like, to me, just such a good performance. He embodies this character, and he is just so deliciously this over-the-top performer type that can also communicate so much with a look. Like, there's many scenes where, like, for example, when he catches Satine and Christian, and, like, you just see his eyes. He says nothing. There's no words. The look in his eyes is amazing. And then other times he's able to show, like, a level of tenderness that is different. It's very impressive. I just think this guy's performance in this role is probably pretty underrated, in my humble opinion.
I agree. He's like a daddy, but... No, he's like her daddy.
Yeah, I mean,
basically.
Effectively, in modern parlance, he's her pimp. Like,
Yeah. I thought his performance was great. Fun fact, it took 2 hours to put on his fat suit every time they were, like, shooting. And I'm just like, that's intense. 2
I did
hours.
not know that.
I always thought he was a chubby man.
Yeah, I thought he was kind of a portly enough dude that I wouldn't have thought they had to put on that much.
Yeah.
Did you know Kylie Minogue was the Green Fairy?
Yes. So sorry, really quick. That
Love
you
it.
brought that
Yes.
up. Fun fact. Ozzy Osbourne was actually supposed to be the original Green Fairy, which he actually so when she like kind of becomes demonic and like screams, that's actually Ozzy Osbourne's vocals.
He's credited as
great.
the Green Fairy on IMDb too.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's fantastic.
I'm a big Ozzy Osbourne fan. Fun fact, in 7th grade, I was Ozzy Osbourne for Halloween. Anyway.
He was great.
I love this. That tracks. That tracks with everything you've told us about yourself too, Melissa, with the darkness and
the darkness.
Yeah.
I like dark things. There's a good thing to embrace them. Oh, are you looking up Chocolat?
Yeah, the person who plays Chocolat. I think that he is such a
Unique.
imperative character because he's constantly taking care of Satine and like never really even says anything. But I thought I would know him from something, but I guess not. His name is Deobia Apare.
Not sure. What were we gonna say, Melissa?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I will say the side characters do take too much of a side. I feel like in this film, like, I think they could have been used a lot more. Again, I get that at the end of the day that this film is essentially like a very long music video.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm fine with that. I know that's not for everyone, but yeah, like, I think his character could have probably been used a little bit more just in regards to some of the narrative things that happen. Because also it's very shocking, like, again, this is kind of jumping around, but like the whole scene with Roxanne's character where she tells the Duke, like, she slips and says the writer instead of, like, and then it's like, okay, who's this chick? Like, just dropping, like, big plot point. But I mean, it's like, yeah, we see her throughout the film, but like,
you don't have any character development, and you're stuck in that moment thinking to yourself, what the hell does she have against Satine? She knows as much as anyone else that this is likely to ruin everything, and she works here too. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, and
exactly.
Like the old nurse mama lady, she barely says anything, but I feel like she plays an important role too. Like, she's like her mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I remember it's the same thing with the unconscious Argentinian as well. I think the stage play, if I remember correctly, Roxanne's character and the Argentinian like had more to do.
They did, yeah.
And their characters were blown out more.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I recall.
I will say. Oh, go ahead. You say.
No, I was just gonna. I'm just so jealous because I want to see the stage plays so badly. So that's all.
It's not playing in Chicago anymore, is it? I was gonna say.
She lives in Colorado.
Well, I was gonna say, Melissa, come for a visit. We'll go see it again with you.
I'm sure it's on tour, but the one thing that they have done is they've updated it with drag
music.
and
Well, that
more
too.
modern music. There's like Lady Gaga and stuff in it. And they also just parodied this last season on RuPaul's Drag Race. So instead of Satine, the main character's name is Saltine. I can't remember. Oh, it's Moulin Rouge. You know, RuPaul.
Rouge dash.
Moulin Rouge. Anyways, so it is nice to see
And
this.
that's your Drag Race side segment.
It's nice to see this, like, I don't know, it is such a cultural icon as well, you know? Like, it still hasn't really left. People know Moulin Rouge. So even though I had never technically seen the movie, I had the scene in my head of them singing to each other come what may. Like, people just know this stuff, so it's great.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman.
Should we talk about her chirping and
She purrs.
Barking
She's a little
and-
wacky whack.
I mean, I think she is incredible, and she, I believe, won Best Actress for that year of Oscars, which is pretty fun that happened, because I think she is putting on an amazing camp, full comedic
Yes.
performance. And like some of the shit she says in this movie is like hilarious and over the top, and the costumes too. We'll get to that at some point, but like, oh my god, some of the costumes that she wears are just, it's incredible.
Yeah, I was actually just Googling to look it up. I had looked some of this stuff up. She got nominated, didn't win, but Best Costume Design did.
It should. Yeah. Unbelievable. There is a continuity error.
Oh?
Where they put her in the red dress, then she shows up in the lingerie, then she's back in the red dress later. So, you clocked that, right? I was like, she was literally just getting tied into her red dress, and then she's like, that's the noises she makes. And then she gets half a song sung to her, and then she falls in love. That was quick. But then,
yes, it was quick.
Was it real love at the beginning? I'll ask you guys this. Or was it what she thought she was supposed to be saying? Because she thought it was the Duke.
At the very, very beginning?
When she first meets the writer, Christian.
Absolutely just saying what she thinks the Duke wants. She thinks he's the Duke, and she thinks that that's what he wants, right? Correct? With the very beginning when they first meet?
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole movie is very fantastical and like Shakespearean, where like people just fall in love like by looking at each other. It's not realistic, but I think in the context of the film, like I do think they fall in love, you know, once Christian, you know, starts singing. And I mean, I fell in love too when I was 10. I was like, oh my god, this guy just keeps singing to me.
Come what may.
It was
like just.
But that's not what the song that he sings at the beginning. What does he sing?
My gift is my song.
Thank you. I was like, I know it's Elton John or something.
Yeah.
I even like just in the very beginning, that one of my first notes about the theater opening, they have that like you see Toulouse and then you see like a glimpse of Ewan's face as Christian, and I just was like, oh, he's such a cutie. Like I literally wrote a note, like just in that moment, he is such a cutie. He's a beautiful man.
I had no idea who he was. Oh my
so
god.
I love that. Did this guy ever get famous? That's
I still can't believe
I just watched all of
Obi-Wan. Yep, you sure
I
did.
should have noticed the mole.
I think at the very beginning she is, and I on this watch I was noticing it even more, like because she changes multiple times how she's behaving, and I think it goes to show again articulating how good that character is at her job, sort of thing. But then I also feel like she does genuinely fall in love when he shows up later that night. Like maybe there was a part of her that was kind of infatuated, but then he shows up later and like, you know, kind of sweeps her off her feet with that song. And you know, when he says, my gift is my song. So
Yeah.
Other notes that I had, I will just say, I think it's interesting that there's like, clearly I think it was probably intentional that this movie is supposed to be taking place in 1900. This movie came out in 2001, and there's all this talk of like cultural revolution and, you know, love and bohemian ideas. And I think that maybe Baz was thinking some of the same things about the turn of the century with, you know, Y2K and all that.
Interesting.
I just clocked
and
that.
I don't mean to be that person, but the movie actually takes place in 1899. Like this whole like
Yep.
sequence, like because it's like the he's retelling about his like first year in Paris, but it's right there.
Despite what some of our critics have said in the past, we like pedantic here. I appreciate that correction. Thank you.
Nick was one time called a pedant, and now he can't get it out of his head.
But truly, details matter.
You're right. It is 1899 because it's Paris 1900 when it opens,
Right.
but then it's gray and sad and broken. It is every time they flash back to the present, man, it's depressing. Like,
Yeah.
The windmill isn't spinning. There's no lights. It's sad.
Clearly. Yeah. I mean, it's meant to be. I have two critiques because we might as well get into that.
Okay.
As we get into things.
Sure.
One, it slows a little bit and drags kind of in the middle. Like there's this portion almost right after or during the Like a Virgin, I feel like. And then it drags. And even though I love the song Come What May, even that sequence for me was a bit slow until it picks back up when they kind of are getting ready to do the play. But that's for me personally. And I think that's the pacing. And it's because that's actually sort of the movie at that point is being paced scene to scene like a normal movie, as opposed to the first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie, which is like, so it feels slower by comparison.
Yeah.
Speaking of slow, my other criticism is it has way too much use of the like fake after the fact slow motion. Like scenes that were not shot to be slow motion, but were then slowed down, and the frame rate looks weird. And I feel like Baz was overutilizing that tool, and it got to me a couple of times while I was watching.
He's an artiste.
Any critiques on your end?
Yeah, you go, Melissa.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were talking to me or Danny.
I want to hear yours.
That's my fault.
No, you're good. I mean, I think the biggest, there's a lot of issues with the film, especially if I'm like really getting into the nitty gritty. But I think the biggest problem is that Satine essentially has tuberculosis, and that is like extremely contagious. So
I thought about that.
I thought about that.
She shouldn't be singing. She shouldn't be kissing. She shouldn't be doing a lot of different things. And like, I have a theory, like when you were just saying that, like in 1900 or like the flashback to the current, it's very depressing. I think Christian has tuberculosis and is gonna die soon.
Wow.
Personally, because I'm just like, that is like such a problem I think I have with like the plot of the story. I'm like, there's no way she would be just belting like she's belting, and like, and she's around a lot of people, and like, she's like, everyone died. I don't know.
I thought about that too because we're watching. I don't know if you watch Ghosts. Very funny comedy, and there's it's this woman who can see ghosts, and there's all these ghosts in the basement of her house, and they're like, we all died from consumption, and there's like the entire basement is like, because they were all just close to each other, and they're all like rotting and falling apart, and she's like in pristine condition until she's like, oh no, a little blood, and then she dies. So yeah, I'm with you on that one, but I guess the whole movie is supposed to be fantastical, right? So it's just kind of he lost his love.
Yeah, I found myself even wondering, like, am I forgetting like what consumption is? Because I was like, I'm pretty sure it's tuberculosis, and then I also thought to myself, am I forgetting and confusing it with something else that's more contagious? Because I thought TB was very contagious. So I'm glad that you caught it. And I had not thought of, Melissa, your point. Maybe the reason everything else is dead is not just that Christian is dying from it, but everyone else in the area of Moulin Rouge has died from it because she was patient zero.
Oh my god. Dang.
Damn Satine.
Yeah.
I will say also the set of this movie, like I said this in my dingle, but the elephant room is so cool. And not to keep bringing it back to the stage play, but they had it in the set on stage, and it was just so freaking cool. But they did update the Broadway musical to not be like stealing Indian culture. It was a different plot. I can't remember, but
yeah,
this is early 2000s, very early 2000s when this came out.
And sorry.
No, I had no other thought. Go.
I was just gonna say, so Baz Luhrmann, a lot of inspiration from this film came from he had just gone to India and he had
Ah,
like spent time in India, and he was very inspired by Indian cinema, and so you can clearly see that it dripping here in Moulin Rouge in different ways. And yeah, it's in the 2023 lens, it's a little icky
Hmm.
in some ways, for sure. But again, I don't think it's in a way that's like super negative by any means. But yeah, I like you said, kind of stealing their their culture. So
Yeah.
not great, but yeah, but the I will say, yeah, the production design and like the costume design is like incredible. I feel like I haven't seen a film in a long time that kind of has that aspect of it. And fun fact, that necklace that Nicole Kidman wears on the scene where like they're in the tower and the Duke is like, "You're mine."
yeah.
That whole thing. That's the most expensive piece of jewelry ever made in film to this day.
It's real
Um,
diamonds.
yes.
Oh my God. I did not know that either. Holy crap.
I wonder why they were like, it has to be real.
I mean, it sparkles. I mean, it catches the light. It does its job. It wowed you even when you're watching it on screen.
I wonder where it is at this moment in time. Like, who has it? Who bought it? Bezos.
Yeah, I want to know too. 'Cause that's beautiful.
Yeah. Or maybe it's in a museum or something.
I was gonna say, I bet it's like Paramount has it or something like that on display.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of criticisms about this movie except for it's manic, but also their love is very endearing and believable to me. Like, I really do feel like they love each other and they want each other, and I think it's with the help of that song, which, like you said, the lyrics are kind of just like universal. Like, it's like, hey, being in marriage, being in life, like, things happen, life sucks. Things can be really bad sometimes, but like, I will be with you forever. I think it's just a very sweet little.
Yeah.
It's sweet. Obviously, it's a sad movie, but I didn't cry. And Nick did. He cried a lot last night.
I did.
And then
I got very emotional.
in the middle of the Roxanne scene, I have to say this.
Uh-oh.
We were all cuddling and it was like, so intense
Oh
where
my
there's like
gosh.
they're cutting to all these different scenes and all these things are happening. And Nick farted, but it was silent and it smelled so bad. And I was trying to be like in the moment, like, what's happening? And I looked over, I was like, did you just... It took me really out of Moulin Rouge.
And it's funny because when we went to see the stage play, I talked so much about how the Roxanne scene in the movie had been something that stood out to me with the way it was filmed and the sort of just powerful emotion behind that of the Roxanne, like that guy's voice.
It filled your whole tummy and then you
I just ruined it.
ruined it.
Amazing.
I did want to revisit because I didn't talk about this when you brought it up earlier. The quote being, "The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and to be loved in return." And to me, it's funny because it's played sort of at first as this like the bohemian ideal of like, oh, just let yourself fall in love and let yourself, follow your passions and be infatuated. But then if you think about it at a deeper level too, like life you were talking about, sometimes that's all you can ask for is to just truly give yourself over to someone and love them and then have them return that love. And that is the greatest thing that you can ever learn, is that that's kind of what love, or life rather, is about, is like finding that. And if you find that, then you've found the answer to life.
That's cute. Yeah, I will say this movie is fantastical and cheesy and a lot, but also the message is what you just said. It's true, and it's deep, and it's not like they're trying too hard to put the message in there. I think it actually came across in this wild movie.
Melissa, any other thoughts?
I don't know if I can top that. You guys.
You don't got to top it.
No, it was great. No, I completely agree. I think some people who criticize the film don't feel that way, which I don't personally understand. They find it shallow and whatever, like too manic to even like I guess consume. But I love this film. I think it's definitely one of those ultimate hopeless romantic type of films, and I'm here for it. And I also like was raised on like classic rock kind of and just love songs like this. So like that just really worked for me, all the different meshing of the songs. Yeah.
My gift is my song.
Yeah. I would like to
Exactly.
see it like they did for Hamilton, where they like film the Broadway version of it.
Oh.
with the updated songs because I really like the way they did it.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, truly, Melissa, if you get a chance to catch it, I would encourage you because you'll see all the differences like me, but obviously the broad strokes are there, and it's just a bunch of cooler, more updated music even that's hitting the same notes.
I was going to say something I forgot.
Uh-oh, she forgot what she was going to say. You're cutting out on the mic from my ears anyway.
It'll come back to me. Keep talking.
Well, let's see if that comes back to her while we're kind of summing up the movie anyway, Melissa. Why don't we start with your heart rating and then would you renew your vows? I'm guessing I know the answer to at least that second question, as typically is the case. But so 0 to 5 hearts, 5 being the biggest. This is supposed to kind of be an objective, like how would you actually rate it in terms of what you think the quality of the movie is? And then the would you renew your vows is much more the like, does it do it for you? Are you going to find yourself revisiting this movie in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think objectively, it is probably more like a 4 and 4.5, but I would give it 5 because I love this movie and it means a lot to me.
Dig it.
And I don't personally like again, even though there's definitely like issues with the film and like potentially things you could change, I wouldn't really change it. And yeah, I would 100% renew my vows. I actually watched it twice in preparation for this show, and my husband was like, "Was that necessary?" I was like, "No, absolutely not. I don't care."
I love that.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
I think objectively,
Uh-oh.
I would give it 3.5 out of 5. So sorry.
That hurt. Sorry,
Because
continue.
if my head was hurting at the beginning and yeah, and I didn't cry. I cried when it was live. I didn't cry in this one. I cry when you sing to me. I didn't cry in the movie. So I don't know. Maybe there's something about the movie. Would I renew my vows? I'll watch it live. I would like to watch it live, or I'd like to watch an updated one of this. But
So this movie though, it's a hard pass. That's what I'm hearing from you.
maybe I would skip the first. I would go straight to the scene where Nicole Kidman goes. That's the best part. She's shaking her titties. She's wild.
I think maybe the first time I saw this movie, I might have caught it like past that point too, just for what it's worth. That might have actually helped with my viewing. I was on the fence, back and forth, 4.25 or 4.5. I think to balance above yours, Danielle, I'm gonna give it the 4.5.
Okay.
We're gonna go with the 4.5. There are, even as Melissa was accepting, there are some flaws. I pointed out some things that are pacing raw issues for me, but no, overall, I think this movie actually is very strong and holds up, and I absolutely would renew my vows because I will certainly at some point in my life revisit this film.
Foch. I remembered what I was going to say. You should watch Elvis because it is similar to this movie.
Oh, yeah.
With the costumes, I think, are beautiful. I think the sets are very unique. So, yeah, I would recommend watching Elvis. It's also very long.
Yes.
But it doesn't feel long because it's
it moves.
manic. Yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and give our plugs. We'll start with Melissa. Melissa, where can the movie lovers, listeners find you and hear more of your thoughts on these things?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's Melissa Woody with zeros for the O's. Or on Letterboxd. That's mostly where I live, at M Woody.
Very good. And Danielle, do you have anything to plug? Keeping in mind that this will be coming out at the end of the month of March.
Yeah, it's my birthday, so send me money.
Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
My Venmo is DannyMiami92. Thank you so much. Let's see if I get any money.
I'll go ahead and parlay that into a plug for us. If you want to send Danny money, but you don't want to do it just, for no reason whatsoever, you can find us on Patreon now. I just finished editing one of our things. I'm trying to have a more frequent extra content there, including Guy Love with Movies, where we are talking about Avatar 2 with me and past guest Lauren, and we go a little deeper, nerd out a little bit more, get kind of esoteric, because that's kind of the types of people that we are. So if you go ahead and follow us over there, then that'll also encourage me to keep making more of that content, because we don't necessarily have that many patrons yet, and therefore I don't necessarily always feel as obligated to create that content. But anyway, so there's that. You can follow us at In Love with Movies. That's us, at at the letter N, Love with Movies, all spelled at. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, all the socials, at Nic Loves Movies. That's Nic Nick, LUV Love, Nic Loves Movies. I'm also on Letterboxd there with the same name as well, and we will catch you all there to keep the conversation going about love and movies.
You're supposed to say, I love you, Danielle.
I was waiting to complete that and let you go first.
I love you, Nick.
I love you, Danielle.
We love you, Melissa.
Thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate it. And we love you, movie lovers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Danny Miami 92 at Venmo.
And we're out.